This is a report by Louis Shahay, Boarding Schools and Native American Genocide. One of the most infamous quote, but main ideology for the boarding school was kill the Indian and save the man. This quote was given by Civil War veteran Richard Henry Pratt in his 1892 speech at the National Conference of Charities and Correction in Denver, Colorado. His quote, "A great general has said that the only good Indian is a dead one, and that high sanction of his destruction has been an enormous factor in promoting Indian massacres. In a sense, I agree with the sentiment, but only in this, that all the Indian there is in the race should be dead. Kill the Indian in him and save the man." End quote. General Richard Henry Pratt. Boarding schools were initially set up as an experiment to teach Native American children how to live like white people. Culturally, assimilation of indigenous children was the sole purpose as well. Starting with the Indian Civilization Act or in Civilization Fund Act of 1819, the United States had placed laws for establishing Indian boarding schools across the nation. Common beliefs that the boarding schools shared is that the residential schools would benefit Native youths by educating them, demonstrations of the Christian church, and that the system could empower more people to succeed in life. The start of the genocide. Between 1869 to 1960s, there were hundreds of thousands of Native children who were forcibly taken from their homes on the reservation and placed into Indian boarding schools. With boarding schools were controlled by the federal government and the churches, with the opposed account of hundreds of thousands of kids taken. By 1900s, there were 20,000 children that were in the boarding schools. By 1925, the number of children, Native children had taken to boarding schools had tripled. Once arriving at any boarding school, students were stripped of any traditional clothing and belongings. Then the children had their hair cut to soldier buzz cuts for the boys, and for the girls, they had their hair cut into women's bob cuts. The children were also given Anglo names, and with their cultural traditions forbidden, children were beaten for speaking their native tongue. These encounters were done by professors, deans, priests, and nuns. Native children had suffered physical, sexual, cultural, and spiritual abuse and neglect by these boarding schools. Physical appearance changes of children at boarding schools. In the first figure, this is an image of a young boy named Thomas Moore who had been to a boarding school this is how much the children had changed from their traditional look. This picture was taken in 1897. In figure 2, this is a before and after image of Tom Torellino. The first picture was taken by John Choate in 1879 and after photo was taken in 1885. There have been experts who believe that Choate had likened Tom's skin tone to make a point that with the education, the Indian will be killed and the man will be saved. Quote. Figure 3. This image is a group of 4 Native children who were taken in 1880. The after image was taken a year after being in the Carlisle Indian School. This is the boarding school called Carlisle Indian Boarding School. Carlisle Indian Boarding School had opened in 1879 in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. This was the first government-run boarding school for Native children. For individuals to help set up the forced assimilations, The Army had transferred barracks to the Bureau of Indian Affairs for use at the boarding schools. All Native children were stripped away to convert to Christianity, and in times when discipline was needed, there was corporal punishment and even solitary confinement. While many things at the schools were of the worst experience, many natives have been able to experience sports such as football, baseball, hockey, and even participated in the Carlisle music band. In this figure, an image of a picture of the student body and where the students had once stood. Carlisle boarding school's downfall. Carlisle had been in the operation for only 39 years but had set the stepping stones of many other Indian boarding schools. The intentions of General Pratt and others are now labeled as cultural genocide. After further investigation into the management of the boarding school in 1914, there was a decline in attendance and morale. Thus, when World War I had begun, enrollment had declined once again. On September 1st, 1918, the Carlisle Indian Boarding School was officially closed. In 1892, the U.S. Army had used the buildings for a rehabilitation center, hospital, and the Carlisle Military School was then established. Figure 5. A photo of the student body taken in front of the Carlisle Indian School in 1892. These are my citations. And these are my image citations. Thank you.